First up, a fundamental development dilemma. This question was asked in 2022. Do you agree that increasing dependence on donor agencies for development reduces the importance of community participation in the development process?
Right. So to unpack this, first, what are donor agencies? We're talking about groups, could be domestic or international.
Like the World Bank,
Yeah.
WHO, big names like that.
Precisely. Or large foundations, too. They provide financial help, sometimes technical expertise.
And their money is definitely needed, right? I mean,
Right.
for huge projects or, say, during a crisis.
Oh, absolutely. The research points to some clear benefits. One, they seriously boost government funds, gives them more fiscal room to maneuver. Think of the World Bank funding the Dam Rehabilitation Project, DRIP.
Okay.
Two, they often bring in specialized skills, and they might work in areas the government kind of misses, maybe linking up with local NGOs.
Mm-hmm.
Three, they're vital in emergencies, like, WHO during COVID-19 providing guidance and supplies.
Makes sense. But the question zeroes in on the cost of this dependence. Where does the community sort of lose its voice when these big agencies step in?
Yeah, that's the crux. This is where we get the idea of the aid curse. If you rely too much on external funding, it can really curb your financial independence.
So if a community knows someone else will always bail them out, why bother trying to find your own solutions?
You've hit it. It's not just the money. It affects the mindset. It reduces that drive for local innovation. And that leads straight to the second big problem, the top-down approach. Donors often come in with their own prepackaged solutions, right? A kind of centralized model.
Instead of letting the community figure out what actually works for them.
Exactly. The community becomes just a recipient, not really a partner in the process.
Now, this is where it gets really interesting for me. The sources mention a case study, these self-help groups in Panguane, a tribal area, right? They apparently innovated by making a jam from local fruits and exporting it. That sounds like pure bottom-up self-development.
Right.
Came from local needs, local knowledge.
Yeah, that Pangi example is perfect. It shows exactly what a bottoms-up approach can achieve. So the answer isn't to just, reject donor agencies entirely.
It's more about balance.
It's about balance, yeah, and collaboration. You need the government, civil society, the donors all working together, but critically, with strong regulation of those donor agencies and always prioritizing local input and local ownership.
Okay, so if external aid has this dependency risk, let's look inside India at that third pillar of governance, civil society organizations, NGOs.
Yeah.
Moving to a question from 2021. Can civil society and non-governmental organizations present an alternative model of public service delivery to benefit the common citizen? Discuss the challenges.
Well, CSOs and NGOs, they're often much closer to the ground, aren't they? Closer than maybe a distant government office. Their flexibility, their reach, it makes them potentially very useful for service delivery.
Can you give us some concrete examples of where they shine? Like, how do they maybe do things better than the state sometimes?
Sure. They're often really good at mobilizing resources quickly. Think about Akshaya Patra during the COVID lockdowns, distributing massive amounts of food relief. That was crucial.
Right.
They also have specialized expertise. Look at Pratham NGO's AZER report. That's a huge study on kids' education outcomes, and the government actually uses that data to shape policy.
So they provide data, they fill gaps.
Exactly. They're vital for that last-mile delivery, helping teams like Swachh Bharat actually reach the most remote homes. And they act as communication links, too, advocating for people, sometimes even filing PILs, public interest litigations.
Okay, but the question asks if they can be an alternative model. That sounds like maybe replacing government services or at least significantly taking over. What stops them from becoming the main provider?
That's the big sticking point. The core issues are, well, accountability and structure. The research highlights problems with anhosism.
Meaning they sort of pop up for a crisis but don't stick around.
Yeah, they might lack the continuity, the long-term planning that a government ideally provides. And very importantly, there are serious concerns about financial management. Misappropriation of funds.
How serious are we talking?
It seems quite serious. The sources cite CBI data suggesting that less than 10% of NGOs were actually filing their required financial statements. That creates a huge trust problem.
Wow, less than 10%.
Yeah. And then there's the government concern, sometimes justified, that foreign funds are used by some NGOs to deliberately stop critical projects. The Kudankulam nuclear power plant protests are often cited as an example.
So if there's that much financial murkiness, building the trust needed for them to be a real alternative must be incredibly difficult.
It really is. Look, in a democracy, ultimately, it has to be the elected, accountable government leading the way. CSOs are absolutely essential partners, but they need much, much better financial accountability if they want to properly fill the gaps.
Sticking with this idea of outside influence, let's shift from delivering services to shaping policy. The next question, also from 2021. Pressure groups play a vital role in influencing public policy making in India. Explain how the business associations contribute to public policies.
Okay, so a pressure group is basically any organized group, could be environmentalists, farmers, businesses trying to sway public decisions. They use legal methods mostly, lobbying, petitions, publicity.
Are they always helpful? Or do they sometimes just push narrow interests?
Well, it's a bit of a double-edged sword, isn't it? On the one hand, they can be facilitators. They can increase government accountability. Think about that ACER report again, pushing for better education policies.
Right.
And they provide expert input. When business groups like CII or FICCI get involved, they bring technical knowledge that maybe bureaucrats don't have, like on 5G policy or complex supply chains.
But doesn't that kind of specialized input mostly benefit the companies themselves, maybe not the general public?
That's always the risk, yes. And the research does point out that pressure groups can also be hurdles. They can influence big international decisions like India pulling out of the RCEP trade deal. And sometimes they use less legitimate tools like organizing bans or strikes that disrupt public life. That crosses a line.
So for business associations specifically, their main contribution is technical and economic know-how.
Primarily, yes. They're really important for two things. One, creating a platform for different business interests to find some consensus. Two, offering that technical input that helps India connect better with global value chains. Basically, helping government figure out how to make doing business easier and more competitive.
All right, let's turn inward now. Look at the state's own engine, the civil services.
Yeah.
We've got two related questions here, one from 2020 about institutional quality driving economic performance and suggesting reforms, and another from 2017 asking if drastic reforms are needed because neutrality and effectiveness are lacking.
This is absolutely foundational. The civil services, the steel frame, were designed way back based on neutrality following the rules, but the analysis suggests that old framework is, well, struggling today.
Can you break down the problem simply? Why is this steel frame maybe rusting? And why does that hurt ordinary people?
There are a few layers to it. First, there's a real lack of independence sometimes. Civil servants can feel pressured to just follow what the political bosses want, which compromises that neutrality.
Okay.
Second, there's the colonial legacy. It created a system focused more on hierarchy, on maintaining order, rather than, say, serving the public with real empathy.
What about the system itself? I've heard terms like Weberian bureaucracy or the ivory tower. What do those mean in practice?
Well, the Weberian bureaucracy model is very rigid. It's all about the rules. So you might have a situation where an official is more worried about getting every signature on the right line of some outdated form than actually solving the person's problem standing in front of them. Exactly. The rules become the end goal, not service delivery. And that leads to huge public frustration.
I can imagine.
And the ivory tower approach, that just means a disconnect. You know, senior officials sitting in central offices, maybe relying only on reports, not actually getting out into the villages or slums to see the reality. It breeds a lack of empathy, leads to poor policy design and execution.
So if the problems are that deep, the solutions need to be pretty drastic too. What reforms are being suggested?
The sources point to major changes needed, both structural and ethical. On the accountability front, there's a push for regular performance reviews like the Sparrow system. That's the Smart Performance Appraisal Report recording online window.
Catchy name.
Yeah. And there need to be real consequences for consistent underperformance, potentially including compulsory retirement.
And ethically, to get away from that, rules over empathy culture.
That's vital. Things like a mandatory code of ethics, maybe ethical auditing. Moving towards the principles you see in initiatives like Mission Satyanishta, focusing on integrity, empathy, compassion. But maybe the biggest shift needed is structural.
How so?
Moving the whole system from being rules-based to being role-based.
Okay, explain that difference. Role-based versus rules-based. What does that actually look like?
Rules-based means you follow the procedure, follow the script, almost regardless of the outcome. Role-based means your primary job, your role, is to achieve a positive outcome for the citizen. This needs different skills, judgment, specialized competence. And the government's big initiative here, Mission Karmayogi, is aiming squarely at this. It's meant to be a huge tech-driven transformation to create civil servants who are competent specialists, not just rule-following generalists, making them fit for a modern India.
Okay, moving from that central bureaucracy to a very different kind of influential group, farmers. This query is from 2019. What are the methods used by the farmers' organizations to influence the policymakers in India, and how effective are these methods?
Farmers' organizations, they use a whole toolkit of methods to exert influence. There's the quiet behind-the-scenes lobbying. Sugarcane farmers have historically been quite effective at influencing subsidies and schemes that affect them. Then there's generating public awareness, getting sympathy through the media. They're often very good at that.
And then there's the more visible stuff, the direct action.
Exactly. Protests, agitations, sit-ins, rail roco, where they block railways, roadblocks. It's disruptive, high-impact stuff. And interestingly, some groups, like Swaraj Abhiyan, are now doing serious policy research too, offering detailed alternatives to government plans.
So how well do these different methods actually work? Do they get results?
Often, yes, they're very effective. On the positive side, they've definitely secured big wins. Think farm loan waivers, higher minimum support prices, or MSPs. They even played a role in getting schemes like PM Kisan introduced. It shows the power of collective action.
But there's a downside too, right? This idea of the populist trap.
Absolutely. Their pressure can sometimes push governments towards making decisions that are purely populist, good for winning votes, maybe, but not always fiscally smart or good for the economy long term.
Yeah.
And of course, when protests get out of hand, like the Red Fort incident during the farm law protests, it causes major disruption and can actually hurt their public support. So their effectiveness is kind of a tightrope walk between legitimate influence and disruptive action.
Let's talk about self-help groups now, SHGs. This topic came up in 2017. The question is, does the emergence of self-help groups, SHGs, point to the slow but steady withdrawal of the state from developmental activities? Examine their role in government promotion measures.
Right. The general feeling in the sources is, yes, SHGs do signal a kind of strategic shift by the state. It's not that the state is vanishing, but it seems to be moving more from being the direct provider of everything
to being more of a facilitator.
Exactly, a facilitator. You see this in the rise of public-private partnerships and the huge focus now on microfunding, which is where SHGs are key.
And these SHGs, they're decentralized, peer-run groups, mostly women, right? Why are they seen as such a powerful tool for development?
Their impact, especially in rural India, can be truly transformative. First, financial inclusion. The SHG Bank Linkage Project run by NEBIRD, it's the world's biggest microfinance program. It taps into rural savings incredibly effectively.
Wow.
And since something like 90% of these groups are women-focused, they become huge engines for social equity, developing leadership skills among women, creating employment, fighting poverty. Often they collaborate directly with government bodies, like the Kudumbashree SHG network in Kerala.
They really sound like the ideal model of community participation we were talking about earlier, the opposite of that top-down donor thing. But surely they face challenges too.
Oh, definitely. Decentralized power is great, but it has limits. You still have the patriarchal social structure in many places, which can limit women's actual power within the group. Financially, they often struggle with high non-performing assets, or NPAs. That means groups borrow money but find it hard to pay back, which weakens the whole system.
Right.
And there's often a lack of sort of technical skills or financial literacy. This can sometimes lead to the money being used for, say, social obligations like weddings rather than income-generating activities. Fund diversion, basically.
Okay, we've reached our final detailed question, also from 2017. It asks, how do pressure groups influence the Indian political process? Do you agree that informal pressure groups have emerged as more powerful than formal pressure groups in recent years?
Well, we've covered the how lobbying, advocacy, using the media, legal routes. But the really interesting part here is this idea of a power shift between the formal, registered groups and the more informal, spontaneous movements.
So are you saying that, like, a sudden social media campaign or maybe a caste association that mobilizes quickly, are they actually more powerful now than established bodies like FICCI or a big trade union?
The research seems to suggest that yes, often they are, especially when it comes to driving rapid policy changes.
Why is that?
Informal groups, they tend to be very proactive, very focused on a specific issue. They can tap into public energy, often from a really broad social base, almost overnight. Think about the massive public reaction and the policy changes that happened after the Nirpaya
Right,
case.
that was huge, driven by public outrage.
Exactly. That kind of momentum, driven by an informal, widespread public outcry, can sometimes achieve more legislatively and faster than maybe years of quiet, formal lobbying by established groups.
Inter-
It really highlights a key dynamic in modern democracy, doesn't it? You need the formal groups for structure, for technical details, but the informal groups, they tap into that raw, immediate public feeling. Having healthy participation from both types is crucial for a vibrant democracy, as long as they act in the national interest, of course.
Wow, that was quite a tour through the machinery of governance. Let's quickly recap the main takeaways for you, the listener. Helps with active recall, making it stick.
Yeah, good idea. And we saw that constant tension, didn't we? Centralization versus decentralization.
Okay, first, the development dilemma. Relying too heavily on donor aid. It can boost funds but risks creating that aid curse. The key seems to be regulation and a bottoms-up approach, valuing local innovation. Remember that Penge SHG jam example.
Second, the third pillar. NGOs and CSOs are vital for getting services delivered, especially that last mile. But they face serious accountability issues, particularly around money. They can help the state, but they can't really replace it without major reforms in their own transparency.
Third, the steel frame. The civil services need fundamental change. It's about shifting from just following a rules-based model to focusing on achieving outcomes for citizens. That's the role-based approach, needing empathy, competence, and initiatives like Mission Karmayogi.
Fourth, pressure groups. All kinds matter. Formal business groups like FICCI provide technical input. Informal groups like farmers' organizations can achieve real political wins like MSP hikes or loan waivers. Power is definitely spread out, not just in government buildings.
And finally, self-help groups, SHGs. Their rise shows how effective decentralized development can be. It suggests the state might be smartly shifting towards facilitating development rather than controlling everything directly. But the SHGs need to tackle their own internal challenges like those MPAs and literacy gaps.
So this brings us to a really critical connection, a theme running through all this. The challenge of genuine decentralization. How do we effectively shift power and resources away from centralized government or even big donor agencies down to local institutions like SHGs and communities? And how do we do that while making sure they are accountable and effective?
Yeah, that's the million-dollar question. And here's maybe a final provocative thought for you to chew on. Considering the power we just discussed of informal groups, protesters, social media movements, how might the continuing rise of digital platforms further challenge the traditional formal ways democracy works, like parliament or registered lobbyists? Is digital activism changing the rules of the game? Something worth thinking about.
Definitely something to consider.
Thanks for diving deep with us today. We really hope this has given you a solid foundation to better understand the complex, always shifting machinery of governance and development in India. Until next time.